Okay, welcome to week one. Week one, we're going to now start talking about the fundamentals of the stack pass. All right. So with the stack pass, traditionally, a lot of guys just like to get some type of double unders. All right. The problem with this double under position is that my opponent's legs can get very heavy on my biceps. So from here, it's super hard for me to kind of get any type of stacking position. So that's the first problem that we have to look at. All right. The second problem is that when you do get into a stack pass, guys like to grab the lapel close to the neck, right? It does leave a lot of this opening here where the guy can invert the knee and so forth. So traditionally, you'll see stack passing being shown where there's a double undergrip, all right? And a lot of times this presents heavy legs, guys hard to kind of like get the stacking position, as well as the more I lift my head from his body, the easier for him now to present feet onto my shoulders and chest, all right, and then to start regarding. So how do we prevent this? Well, the stack passing system, instead of looking at, we will look at a double under system, but what we will actually want to look at is a single stack pass system. So what that looks like is that I'll have one arm around and one arm is going to be behind the leg, all right? With this, if I have a connection to his lapel, all right, and my head is low, I'm able then to get off my kneecaps and off my shoelaces and actually put pressure into the individual without him using his legs to carry weight on me. And that's usually the biggest problem with some type of stack pass, is that the legs present the problems, all right, by the legs hanging on either the arms or shoulder and causing problems in terms of regarding so forth. So what we want to look at first is how I'm going to enter this position just for this drill, understanding that I want to close my heel to my bum. And why I want to close the space, if I present a space between my bum and my heel, it's easy for the guy to, on the outside position, enter some type of delihiva, and on the inside position, enter some type of reverse delihiva. So what this also does is it prevents a triangle. So we've got three things: the delihiva, the reverse delihiva, and the triangle. But I must take the space between my heel and my bum, so I connect my heel and bum together. So for instance, now if my partner wants to enter the delihiva, there's hardly any space. The reverse delihiva, there's hardly any space. And even if my arm gets stuck and he tries to go for a triangle, right, my knee can present a frame and prevent the triangle system. Okay? From there, we need to understand that I need to loop one hand in, right? So my one hand loops in, and what I'm basically going to be doing now is I'm creating a tight line on the lapel. So what I want to always be doing is going towards his belt or his belly button line. So I grab the lapel and I zip tie it as close as I can to his leg or his belly button. My other hand now is I create a C cup and I go behind his leg, right? And I'm taking my head, instead of taking my head up high, if I take my head up too high, it's easy for the guy to slip his leg in and present frames on me. As well as why we take the hand and zip tie it down to his belt line is if I open my elbow up, right, we present a knee slippage from here. So I want to take that space away. So I zip line all the way to the belt line. I present my head down low, all right? My hand stays behind his leg, either by grabbing the gi or C-cupping. And then I need to create pressure. And how I create pressure always, guys, is in a tripod position, all right? So my shoelaces and my kneecaps cannot be touching the floor. So I'm in this position. Now from here, if I just lean, all right, it's hard for the individual to shrimp. So if my partner starts shrimping away, I have mobility, I've created pressure. And that's the first part of it. So if we see it from the other angle, 1, 2, and I'm driving my shoulder in. As you can see, my knees and shoelaces are off, right? I'm driving, turning my hip in, and I'm always cutting the angle towards the passing side that I'm going to. The thing is, if I keep square, it's easy for this individual then to hook the leg in and then to pull me into like a half guard position, right? So I always want to not present this leg up too high as well, where this guy can hook the leg. So if we turn, again, if I'm in this position, I'm not presenting him the leg, right? That's why I'm in a tripod position and I'm always cutting the corner, right? If I understand my body position, my hand position, right, and my head position, there's a lot of weight that the guy has to carry, and that's a proper way of stack passing. I'm not presenting any space that the individual can implement a knee slip or implement any types of frames on myself, as well as I'm not presenting the leg that he can insert a hook or a butterfly hook that then can cause some type of off balance. Now, my secondary arm, when I'm in this position, my secondary arm, what I need to do with my secondary arm is I'm going to close the space between my elbow and his bum. So I stack him, okay, and my hand goes all the way to his belt or to the gi. But I'm not doing this where now there's space. If there's space, he's able then to insert the hook into my elbow line, start disconnecting and pulling it in for a triangle or so forth. So whenever I'm stacking, I stack, the bum's off the ground, I connect and I close the space between my elbow and his bum. There must be no space at all, either by grabbing his belt or grabbing deep onto the gi line. From here, guys, this is where the stack starts coming from, right? If there's any space, right, the individual is going to be able to frame on myself, start creating space and re-guarding, right? What we also need to understand now that we understand how to stack correctly and what our secondary arm does is the actual finish. Because his hip is off the ground, I'm not going to now just roll my head and try pass. I'm going to try to take his hip, right, to the floor first. So basically I'm pushing him that his hip hits the floor. Once his hip hits the floor, I can shoulder shrug and then start passing that way, right? So what it looks like is I'm in a combat stance, not giving any space. I shoot the one arm in, right, going straight to the lapel, tightening the lapel, putting my head down and elevating the stack system. I connect to his bum and I'm pulling him up. Once I've got this, I take his hip to the floor first and then I roll my head, right? I don't want to be rolling my head without his hip to the floor. The hip to the floor allows me to complete the pass. Now, a big problem with this as well is understanding that from this position, right, I don't want to make sure that his hip reconnects to the floor, right, and I need to keep the stack. But if I overstack for him to escape, he's going to back roll, correct? So I need to understand the belt grip or the grip that is at the back here needs to do two jobs. It needs to stack, but it also needs to push down. So my one hand is pulling in and the other hand is kind of pushing down and pulling up. Right? When I feel that he wants to back roll, I push down. Right? If he's trying to push his bum down, I'm pulling up a little bit. Right? So I'm understanding the whole concept of pulling his belt down and pulling it up. Because majority of the time, if the guy back rolls, he's going to start re-guarding, re-wrestling. So the job of that secondary hand needs to be two things. Understanding how to stack and not to stack too much. And understanding that if the individual, and you feel the individual's weight going into a back roll, that I'm pushing down to the ground, right? So again, I'm in my combat guard. I've created no space. I swim one arm in and I dive into the stack pass position. My hand is behind, right? I get the lapel, I pull it in, I start raising and cutting the angle. His bum lifts, I add an extra lift. He tries to back roll, I push his bum down. Now I take his hip to the floor and then I shrug the shoulder and then I can start collecting the head and I've completed the pass, right? And that's the fundamentals of our stacking system, right? we look at it as a single arm stacking system because it provides less trouble with me carrying the individual's weight other than like a double arm stacking system, right? Understanding that the single arm stack system, I'm able to cut the corner, right? Attack the angle of the individual, right? Which allows less weight to be carried on me. I need to understand that I'm not creating any space with my elbows. I'm grabbing the lapel, pulling it down to his belt line. My head is not up high. I'm putting my head down to complete the circle, to connect to my hand. I'm getting my knees and shoelaces off the floor into a tripod position so I can actually implement pressure, get his bum off the ground by stacking him correctly. Once the bum's off the ground, I'm using my secondary hand to grab the belt. And remember, the space between my elbow and his bum, there must be no space. So I grab deep onto the belt, and then I start elevating to add extra stacking. Now, we don't want to overstack the individual, that the individual then back rolls, and is able to re-guard or re-wrestle. If you feel your opponent starting to backwards roll, I'm using the belt and I'm pinning his hip down towards the mat. It's a good feeling system, all right? Once I understand the control point, I am then taking his bum and I'm pushing forward that his bum touches the floor, and then I'm using the shoulder shrug to pass and control. Big understanding that it is stacking pass, which means it's a slow movement, guys. You're not supposed to make this an explosive movement. It's not supposed to be a fast movement. You're supposed to be in control the whole time. And if you do these step-by-step positions, right, you will always be in control.